As consumers of electronic devices, both people who are blind and people who are fully sighted have an access to a plethora of available options thanks to touch gesture-based screen readers that are now available on the market. Things like the Samsung Galaxy S7 and S7 Edge, the LG G5, the Alcatel One Touch Idol 5, and these are all just a small sample of the literally millions of Android devices out there. And on the Windows side, you've got the Microsoft Lumia 950 and 950 XL, which is, it's not the only Windows device out there, but Windows Phone, I'm sorry, I think they're doomed. But that's a whole other discussion. The point is, mainstream technology can be used by people who are sighted and blind alike. But what if you're a Braille reader? If you're a Braille reader, then there are a lot of advantages to having an all-in-one device, which is to say the Braille display and the keyboard are built into the same unit as is the rest of the hardware of the brains of the computer itself. Now, the devices that have historically been available in this arena are monstrously expensive. They cost about as much as 5 MacBooks, and I'm not kidding. We're looking at anywhere between $2,000 to $5,000, depending on how one of these devices is configured. Also, because of the very small market, the devices have to do more than your typical PDA, because for a lot of people, this equipment, because of the high cost, could be their only computer. Nowadays, I don't know if that's really the case much anymore, because of the ability to get an Android phone for cheap. But about 10 years ago, and especially 15 years ago, that was the case. These devices were literally the difference between employment and unemployment, A's and F's in school for people who were blind. They ran on proprietary software, usually based on Windows CE, with the exception of one device that ran on the Windows mobile operating system. All of those devices are essentially they're not obsolete in terms of their existence, but they're obsolete in terms of being able to keep up with the mainstream market that has leapfrogged what the market that essentially started the instant-on computing craze back in 1987 with the Braille and Speak out of necessity. Not just convenience, because the writing methods for people who are blind are a lot more cumbersome than somebody who can just simply pull out a pencil and paper. So, the Braille and Speak was born, out of a need to deal with a problem. That is what assistive technology does. Assistive technology is technology that allows you to complete a task that you would not be able to do without it. Zoom text, for me, is assistive technology. It allows me to be more productive with my schoolwork. Assistive technology can be something as simple as a pencil grip, for somebody with limited dexterity. My girlfriend uses Dragon Naturally Speaking because it's hard for her to type on the keyboard for long periods. She's a lot more productive when she's able to dictate. She's able to get more done faster. So that's essentially what assistive technology does, and that's what these devices that have traditionally been called note-takers for the blind have been able to do. Again, the difference between surviving and thriving. Now, we go back to the argument about how the mainstream market has leapfrogged the note-taker market, and for good reason. The devices in the note-taker market have to be engineered meticulously, and they cannot fail. They literally cannot fail because, like I told you before, this is make or break stuff. Okay, this is not just one of those, I can just go to the store and Geek Squad will take a look at it for me. They would not know what the stuff is, or even where to begin. Okay, and most people don't even know that the stuff exists. Because the mainstream market has leapfrogged the note-taker market, the devices in the blind market have basically been left in the dust. But that's about to change, because there are new options available that have been announced. 2 of them at the CSUN conference, and one, I don't know what the other one is, and we'll get to that in a minute, but the CSUN conference can be thought of as the CES of assistive technology. So let's take a look at the options. Again, there are going to be 3 of them. The very first one is a brand new device called the Braillenote Touch. The Braillenote Touch is what can be thought of as essentially a 7-inch Android tablet, KitKat tablet, with a 32 character, that you see those pins down there? That is an electronic Braille display. You're probably thinking that if you think about those one-line character displays you may see on exercise bikes at the gym or on old fax machines, if you're old enough to remember those, that's essentially what it is here. It's a single line 32 character display, except instead of visual characters, it utilizes mechanical pins to produce the Braille alphabet. And the beautiful part about this is if you're in class or you're in a meeting and you need to pay attention to the presenter, having to listen to speech and having to listen to the presenter is not easy. So it's really nice to be able to shut the speech off and navigate the device using Braille. This is all done thanks to I guess what could be thought of as a skin, but it's actually a bit deeper than that. As you know, Samsung's got their TouchWiz on top of Android, and LG's got their Optimus UX on top of Android. Humanware's done much the same thing with what they call Keysoft. And Keysoft utilizes a special UI that takes the complexity out of the device. It's much like if you were to get something like Big Launcher or put your phone on easy mode. That is what Keysoft does. It allows access to all of Android's features, but in a much more streamlined method, or method that would be streamlined for somebody who's used to utilizing speech and Braille and a physical keyboard. The technology within Keysoft incorporates special technology on the touch screen you can see above the display that allows for virtual Braille keys to be formed, and this allows for the device to be navigated on without having to worry about mastering various Android TalkBack touch gestures, okay? TalkBack is the screen reader on Android, and there are some gestures, for instance, down and right does one thing, up and right does another, down and left does another. I'm having a hard time memorizing, or not necessarily, memorizing and learning how to use those myself, because my depth perception is off, so I can't get it in a straight line. So something like Keysoft on top of Android greatly reduces that learning curve, and again, it makes the device much more readily accessible for people in the classroom and people in the workplace who will be utilizing this device the most. Agencies will be buying this device on behalf of people that will be using it to accomplish tasks. This is the first of this device's kind to be fully certified by Google. Anything and everything you can utilize on the Google Play Store, you can utilize with this. And the best part is, if you're a developer, then you don't need to learn Keysoft. You don't need to learn Braille in order to make your app accessible on this. All you have to do is utilize the freely available, publicly available Google accessibility guidelines. As long as your app meets those guidelines, Keysoft will take it from there. This is huge, in my opinion. Every Android device, as you know, has pre-installed custom apps. A lot of them, I know a lot of them are considered bloatware, but on a device that literally costs $5,000, I'll let that sink in for a moment, you cannot afford to have bloatware on the device. So they pre-installed software that is genuinely useful. Again, we talked about the user interface. I have not tried Microsoft Word with TalkBack, but knowing Microsoft, there are probably some bugs here and there. Humanware, who developed the Braillenote Touch, has come up with a solution to that within Keysoft called Keyword. It is essentially Microsoft Word. It's not, but it has all the power of Microsoft Word with the ability to save in Microsoft Word formats with the benefits of the Keysoft user interface. Another example is Keymail. And again, this is all to enhance the productivity of the user. The 7-inch screen can actually, it's not just a benefit to people who are blind, as in you're thinking, well, not everybody can type on glass. That's true. And it does require a learning curve, which is why the people who manufacture the device have included a touch cover or a type cover of sorts. It's not a Microsoft type cover per se, but what it is it goes on top of the display and it has a full Braille keyboard, a physical Braille keyboard, and mimics, the keyboard takes over the finger sensing functionality that would form the virtual Braille keyboard on the touch screen. But the other reason the device has the touch screen is because there are 3 buttons on the front: a triangle, a circle, and a square. You'll probably recognize those if you're familiar with Android. Triangle being back, circle being home, square being menu, or recent apps, depending on how your device is configured. If you triple tap the home button on the Braillenote Touch, Keysoft is disabled. You can analogize that to switching home screens. It'd be like switching from TouchWiz to Nova Launcher. Okay, what that does is again it disables Keysoft and it allows somebody who's sighted to pick up the Braillenote Touch and use it as if it were a typical 7-inch Android device. This is great because if you have a colleague or a classmate who wants to take a look at what you've written, you don't need to show them. And this is great in peer review situations where you may have written a paper and your teacher says, pass your paper around. Well, let's say you forgot to print it, or you want somebody to be able to directly annotate on the document, say in Microsoft Word, for example. You can disable Keysoft, hand the device to your classmate or to your colleague. They can annotate it without having to know Braille, without having to know Keysoft. Hand it back to you. You triple tap the home button, and your familiar Keysoft is back, and your annotations are there, and you can do whatever you need to do. Those kinds of scenarios, this thing's gonna sell like hotcakes. Specs are pretty standard otherwise. It's a 16 gigabyte tablet. Now, I know a lot of people are thinking 16 gigabytes is the absolute deathbed, the absolute worst in terms of storage. But if you think about the target audience, a lot of people who are blind, yes, they may be streaming a video over the web or maybe store a video here or there. But the truth of the matter is this device was primarily meant to be a device that connects people and empowers people to be social, be productive. So I don't think, people are going to be putting much in the way of big files on the internal memory. And the device has an SD card slot. So even if you do decide to fill up the memory, you're covered. Again, the pins on the bottom below the display to create the Braille characters, there's 32 of them. Stereo speakers on either side of the display. There are separate headphone out and line in jacks. There's also micro USB and full USB. The micro USB can be used to charge. Now, you can utilize, and this is the beautiful part about something like this new technology. Historically, you'd have to stick to a proprietary power adapter, and if you're anything like me, keeping track of your power adapters can be ugh. But this uses micro USB, so if you don't have immediate access to the Braillenote Touch's own power supply that came with it, let's say you're traveling and you forgot to bring it, then it will charge with your phone power adapter, albeit a lot slower, but it will charge. It's also got, like I said, standard USB, so you can plug in a thumb drive. So again, we have expandable storage options there if you do fill up the 16 gigs of internal storage, although me personally, I don't see many people doing that. It's got HDMI out, so if you're presenting to a class, you can hook it into a projector. 802.11n, Bluetooth Low Energy, 8 megapixel camera, and you're probably thinking, well, why would somebody who's blind need the camera? There are apps out there that allow somebody who's blind to take a picture of an object and the device can describe the object to them. There's also software that allows the person to place the device over a piece of printed text, execute a command, and the device will then be able to read the text back to them, or they can read it in Braille. So they no longer need to worry about people converting a document over to a usable format. If it's a hard copy piece of text, and say it's a government file, for instance, and it's not available for security reasons, or perhaps it's a PDF that's hard to negotiate, they can utilize this technology with the camera. They could take a picture of it and have the Braille display show them everything that they need to know. Accelerometer, gyroscope, GPS. The battery is 5100 milliamp hours and 12-hour runtime, which is actually not at all bad for a device like this. Now, typically, if you were to take away the screen, the device would actually be seeing a lot higher battery life. Typically, these devices have historically been able to run 1 to 2 days on a charge, and that's because they have to. They need to be ready to go at a moment's notice. But still, 12 hours is not bad. You know, it'll get you through the day, and you can charge it overnight. 1.2 gigahertz dual-core ARM Cortex-A9, Texas Instruments, OMAP, which a lot of people may be thinking, oh my gosh, that's not enough to, to do much with. Again, you're looking at, a lot of games available for Android are accessible, but a lot of them are also not. They're too visual. In other words, the software would look at it and go, huh? What do I do with this? As a result, I don't think we can worry about anybody playing super graphically intensive games on this thing. So a 1.2 gigahertz dual core is more than enough. The dimensions are just under an inch by 9.5 inches wide by 6.3 inches deep. The just under an inch is the height. The weight is about 2 pounds. And again, like I said, I think that this device is really going to sell. This is going to be scooped up by schools. There's already a device out there for people with low vision. It's called the Prodigy 12. It's basically a standard off-the-shelf Android tablet with built-in magnification enhancement software. And I think that for people who are blind, their solution has finally come in the form of the Braillenote Touch. But the Braillenote Touch may be my personal favorite, but it's not the only option. This is a device sold by IRIE Assistive Technology, Erie Assistive Technology in the United States. It's manufactured by a Korean company called Neo Access, and they must be brand new to the United States because the Neo Braille is the only device that they've got. The device is pretty similar, except that it runs Android 5.1 Lollipop. It utilizes LTE through AT&T, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, like I said, Play Store certified. It's pretty much an identical device, but I can't speak much to the user interface because I don't know. I've emailed the company and reached out to see what the story is behind this thing. Offhand, I'm trying to remember the specs because there were a lot of them. Let me pull up the page, and then I'll be able to get those to you. So hang on just a moment while it loads. There we go. So the device has, again, Android 5.1, 32-character display. We already talked about that. 64 gigs of flash, 3 gigs of RAM. Samsung Exynos 3420. So it runs an off-the-shelf mainstream processor, 8 cores at 2.1 gigahertz. So that is definitely a compelling case for this device, is that you get more power. You get, like I said, 64 gigs of internal storage You've also got a micro SD card with a max capacity of 128 gigs. You've got 2 USB 2.0 ports and 1 USB-C port. This is where the Braillenote Touch actually has an advantage, in my opinion. A USB-C is not necessarily it's an accepted standard, and the devices are growing. But at the same time, if you're in the same scenario like I talked about earlier, you can't just plug in your micro USB device from your phone to charge this thing. Okay. Mini HDMI versus full HDMI. This thing has, for some odd reason, a full worldwide FM radio. And I say some odd reason is because this is literally the only... oh, no, I'm sorry. No, I goofed. No, this is the second Notetaker that I know of with an FM radio. I'm sorry. The first was the Braille Sense. The battery's a little bit smaller at 3,500 milliamp hours, but it has 2 of them. 2 35 milliamp hour cells, which actually translates to, if I'm doing my math right, 7,000 milliamp hours. So actually this has a bigger battery. Again, LTE through AT&T. I don't know if you're going to have to pay a separate data plan for that or not. Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, GPS, same thing. Haptic feedback, 6-axis gyroscope, digital compass. It's a little bit lighter at 1.5 pounds. Dimensions 9.25 by 5.9 with 0.75 inches. They also are going to supply a keyboard case with this thing if you want it. But again, the one thing I'm curious about is, what is the UI? Because it may have a faster version, a newer version of Android and a slightly faster processor. But one of the things I'm wondering about is, if you're caught in a situation where you need to show somebody something and you don't have cables. I realize I'm being a bit biased to the Braillenote Touch, but it's true if you think about it. People who are blind live in a sighted world. And people who are sighted have no idea the blindness technology exists, most of them. Those that do are either representatives of the industry, are teachers, are parents, or relatives of people who are blind. But if you have never been around somebody who's blind, you probably don't even know the technology that I'm talking about even exists until today. So I think the built-in screen on the Braillenote Touch has a major, major, major advantage. Also, HumanWare's been around for 20 years. This outfit, Neo Access, is a brand new company. So until they prove themselves, I don't know. I honestly do not know what's going to happen. It'll be interesting to see how these two fare out because they're extremely close. They're very competitively priced too, only a few $100s apart. And you're probably thinking, well, a few $100s is a lot. It is, but in terms of if you're already looking at $4,000 or $5,000, a few $100 really isn't there really isn't much in it. At least from an overall, figure standpoint. It's like paying $1,000 for a GPS system that's extremely good on a car. It's a good deal. Another Android device that's available for the blind is actually brand new. It was also announced at the CSUN conference. This is the Braille to Go, or B2G, developed by the National Braille Press, which is a not-for-profit organization who is tasked with increasing Braille literacy across the globe. Across the globe, because this device is pretty much a standard. It's a 20-cell, 8-dot Braille device, 8-dot keyboard. It has a gig of RAM and 8 gigs of internal storage. Specs-wise, that's pretty weak, but you have to understand where we're going with this one. This one has an ethical goal to be able to put Braille in the hands of those who need it. Okay. As a result, the device runs Jelly Bean, and we go back to the argument of, would you rather have cutting edge, or would you rather have something that's stable and works? And especially in a small market like this, you want something that works. Accelerometer, speech input and output, MP3 player, stereo speakers, headset jack, GPS receiver, compass. 5 megapixel camera. It does have video out, but the video out jack is RCA, which also serves for diagnostics. Battery, about the same capacity as the Braillenote Touch at 5400 milliamp hours. Bluetooth version 2.1 plus EDR. 802.11bg Wi-Fi. USB 2.0. Micro USB again for charging, just like the Braillenote Touch. You can get a data plan, and currently they are working with Verizon Wireless to get this off the ground. The device is available in silver or green, as you see here. Now, you're probably thinking, well, what's so great about this? The specs are weak and it's costing $5,000. If there's anything to say from the last two devices you showed me. No. This device, for everything that it is, costs $2,500. Now, compared to $5,000 devices, that is half the price. And historically speaking, that has been the price of a note taker that didn't have a display at all. Okay, so you can see where we're going with this. The National Braille Press, again, not-for-profit organization for getting Braille into the hands of those who need it. Now, these are all the Android options. What about Windows? There's actually something else for them too, believe it or not. This device is the L-Braille by Russian company Elita Group. The device is what can be essentially thought of as a full Windows 10 computer. It was developed in partnership with the people here in the United States known as Freedom Scientific, and the reason is because, if you can see, you probably recognize the display sitting in front of you right now. For those of you who do not, this is the Focus 14 by Freedom Scientific. It's been rebranded under the Elita Group name. The device itself is called the L-Braille. The device is literally a full Windows 10 computer, and it has an Intel Atom processor that runs, let's see, here it is, Intel Atom Quad Core Z3740 at 1.86 gigahertz and 2 gigs of RAM. So we're talking about what would be the cited equivalent of a low-end 8-inch Windows 10 tablet. 64 gigs of internal storage plus 32 gigs of an internal SD card that cannot be swapped out. It is shown as 2 separate drives, but 96 gigs, I mean, that's a lot. And if you incorporate the external SD card slot that can hold a max 256 gig card, if you run the numbers plus 64, you get 352 gigabytes of storage. The device comes with a 10,000 milliamp hour battery that lasts 20 hours on a charge. USB 2.0, 802.11n. It also comes with a 3G GSM modem. And the software that's included with the modem actually allows this to not just be a full Windows 10 PC, but if you wanted to, could be your phone as well. On the software front, again, Windows 10, Home, and it runs JAWS for Windows, which is a screen reading software that basically takes what is displayed on screen, and in the case of the device you see in front of you, will display it in Braille, read it out in electronic speech or both. Input and output through the Focus 14 Blue, which is, again, the Braille display device you see in front of you. The display is essentially the thing that looks like it's sitting inside of a case. Okay, the outside shell is the full computer. Okay, the computer is again in the module behind the display, and the display can be removed from the module so you can utilize it with another device if you wanted to. And the beautiful part is, if they come up with a model that has higher specifications, you don't need to replace the whole unit. You can actually take out the Focus and purchase a new unit and utilize your JAWS license and the display you already have, thus cutting back the upgrade costs significantly. The module has 4 function keys, which are located above dots 2 and 3 and dots 5 and 6. Dots 1 and 4 above those are volume control keys. The key above dot 3, which they refer to as E as in Echo 1, you press and hold that and you end up in an emergency, I'm assuming Linux driven, self-voicing recovery mode. Think of it as the safe mode in Windows. What that does is it's a self-voicing, self-brailing recovery mode that allows you to force restart Windows or JAWS. And this is great because historically, if your computer screwed up, you would need sighted assistance. If you lost Braille or speech, now you don't have to worry about that. The dimensions of the device are 7.4 inches by 4.7 inches by 1.5 inches. Weight is 1.5 pounds. I can't remember the pricing offhand, but it's interesting to see the options because, again, this used to be extremely proprietary, extremely expensive software. The software's opened up, but we still have a lot to do to get the pricing down. Efforts by the National Braille Press and the Elita Group are examples of doing that because they were able to get the technology into the hands of people who need it. And again, if you take away the Braille display of somebody who is blind, that'd be like me coming by while you're working on your laptop and literally yanking the screen out. Okay? You can see the difference that would make in somebody's life. So it's interesting to see the options. Feel free to give me your thoughts. Thank you for watching. Comments are welcome, and have a nice day.